we get a number of questions sent into us from folks that have found us on Instagram or found us on Facebook or just found our podcast through their favorite podcasting app or whatever it is. And we always appreciate getting those questions. And so occasionally we get some questions that we feel like demand a longer explanation than me just typing or Andrea just typing up a response in Instagram or Facebook or whatever. This is one of those questions. So, husband wrote in to us, and he and I had some back and forth on a few different things. But then his ultimate question was, and I appreciated the sweetness of this question. He feels like he is too harsh with his spouse, and he asked me, have we ever done any episodes on just practically how does a husband be sweeter, less harsh with their spouse? And this is a question that resonates with me because sometimes I can be harsh with Andrea, but also this is something we hear a lot of from couples. And really it doesn't go one way or the other necessarily, but just being too harsh. And so we wanted to do an episode and specifically talk about this sort of idea of angry responses, terse responses, harsh words, and what are some practical things that we can do to try and love our spouse better in this way.
Let's get into that.
Before we jump into today's show, I wanted to ask you to check out our website, brand new website, marriagebydesignpodcast.com. That's marriagebydesignpodcast.com. All of our episodes are available there on that website. Love to have you pop over there, follow us there, and check it out.
If you have a topic that you're wanting more information on or you have questions about, you can search on our website by topic, which is a really great feature.
That's right. And more than anything, guys, please share this with someone that would find it meaningful for them. Without any more delay, let's get to the show. Hey, everybody. I'm Nathan Warnock.
I'm Andrea Warnock, and you've joined us for the Marriage by Design podcast, a time where we get to talk to you about God's design for marriage, what the Bible has to say about that, and how we live that out practically.
Right. So we kind of set this up already in the intro, but we did get a question from one of our listeners, a gentleman that had found us. However he found us, he had reached out through Instagram and asked a couple of questions about some things he and his wife are going through, and so he and I talked back and forth a little bit, and he ended with this question about being harsh with his spouse. And so I thought, it's worth spending a little bit of time talking about what does our demeanor, should our demeanor look like within our marriage? And it's easy for us to go like, oh yeah, I know how it ought to look. And certainly that's probably true. A lot of you listening to this probably do. Even he knew that like, hey, it's not supposed to look like this. Mm-hmm. And yet so often we can find ourselves getting in positions where we're being unkind to our spouse or being harsh or whatever word you want to use for it, and doing real damage to that person and to our marriage in the way that we treat them. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So the first thing I want to just talk about is just a little quick look at what the Bible says about gentleness.
Yeah.
And then talk a little bit about what are some practical tips for cultivating gentleness in our marriage and in our own selves. And then we'll kind of think about wrapping it up. Okay, so first thing I want to do is just take a look at what the Bible says. And there's just 3 passages that I wanted to look at. The first one's in Ephesians 4, verse 1 through 3. And this is Paul speaking. He says, I, therefore, a prisoner for the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. Now, of course, Paul's not just talking about marriage in this passage. I mean, he's not talking about marriage specifically right. in this passage. He's talking about with everyone specifically in this case within the body, the church body. But the point and the reason I raise that is, if Paul's saying we ought to be doing this with everyone in our Christian community,
That would include our spouses.
how much
Sure.
more important to be doing it with the one to whom you have committed your life in a covenant relationship of marriage?
Yep. Of course.
The second one that I want to just flip over to is found in Colossians. It's Colossians 3:12 through 13. It says, "Put on then as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other, as the Lord has forgiven you, so you must also forgive." We'll come back to this and talk about that forgiveness issue, because that does certainly play a role when we talk about this gentleness issue with regards to marriage. But again, this is Paul speaking to a different church in this time, but a church body, and saying a lot of the same things, right? Our lives should be characterized by the fruits of the Spirit,
Yeah.
one of which is gentleness,
Right.
and kindness is another, instead of just whatever. And terseness and anger and cutting words and sarcasm and the other things that so easily creep their way into our marriages and can really wreak havoc. We need to be characterized by gentleness and humility and kindness. And so then the last one that I want to talk about, and this one is husband specific, comes from 1 Peter. Peter is writing in this case primarily to the Jewish Christians, but he is talking about the marriage relationship at the beginning of 1 Peter 3. And at the end, in verse 7, this is what he says. "Likewise, husbands," so he had just talked to the women, and basically what he had said to the women is, don't let your adorning, your beauty, be with your outward appearance, but instead make your beauty shine from within. And earlier in chapter 3, he talks about let the adorning be the hidden person of the heart with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. Now he's going to come back to husbands, and he's going to say, "Likewise, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, showing honor to the woman as the weaker vessel, since they are heirs with you of the grace of life, so that your prayers may not be hindered." So what's the urgency, husbands, in how we treat our wives? The urgency is God here is saying through Peter, if you don't treat your wife in a way that's God-honoring, God will ignore you. Mm-hmm. And of course, none of us want that. But the reality is, that's a daughter of the Most High God. And if you're going to mistreat her, he's just straight telling you right here, through Peter 2,000 years ago, he's not going to listen to your prayers. Your prayers will be hindered in their transmission between you and he, because you're living a lie. You're mistreating his daughter, and he's not going to respond to you if you are treating his daughter in a way that is dishonoring to her. So there's a lot on the line when we talk about treating the way that we treat our wives. And in the case of what we're talking about today, this idea of gentleness. If you're listening to this and you're going, look, I don't really care so much about what the Bible has to say about this issue, allow me to speak practically for a moment. There is a very real impact on your marriage when we allow harshness to be a primary environment in our marriage.
Definitely.
And all of us, from the time we're married up until the time we die, we are creating and cultivating an environment in our marriage. And oftentimes, sadly, we allow things that seem like not a big deal, like sarcasm, like cutting words, like harshness, to start defining that culture in our marriage. And before we know it, that culture has taken over the feel of our marriage. And this idea in harshness in communication, along with sarcasm, which is just harshness in communication sort of wrapped in a joke, is going to create hurt feelings. It's going to create defensiveness. It's going to create resentment,
mistrust,
breakdown of trust, and it's going to hinder intimacy. And it's incredible to me the number of, it's not always the husband, but a lot of times is the husband, that sit down and we say, well, why don't you tell us from your perspective what's the problem? Well, seems like she's always defensive when I talk to her. Seems like she resents me. She doesn't trust me, and our sex life is a mess. I mean, those are 4 of the 5 things that I just said will come from an environment in your marriage of harshness. And the 5th one's hurt feelings, and that's probably what's motivating those reactions that she's responding to you in. Now, does that mean it's okay for her to respond that way? No, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. And if you're a wife or a husband, and you're listening to this and you're going, yeah, my wife doesn't speak to me with kindness. My husband doesn't speak to me with kindness. He's harsh to me. He's sarcastic to me. Then we would refer you to a saying that we say all the time on this podcast.
And in our home.
Which is, your response is your responsibility. You don't get to blame someone else for how you respond to them. So if you're responding to your husband in unkindness, defensiveness, withholding intimacy from him because of the way he's treating you, that's a separate sin, and that's your deal you need to deal with.
Yeah, you were talking about what kind of harshness is, and it was a lot of in communication. But I would say harshness can be a body language too. And that's something that we need to watch out for.
Sure.
If our attitude towards doing something for our spouse or serving our spouse or having a self-sacrificing attitude is to huff and puff, or I'm rolling my eyes, or whatever that, talking under my breath, murmuring about it, whatever.
Sure.
Not if that, harshness can be a body language too.
That's true.
And so watching out for those things, I think oftentimes I hear women say, harsh with words and things like that. But it's also just the way he carries himself about things in our marriage and the way he responds in body language. And so I think that's something to watch out for.
And again, you're talking about nonverbal things.
Yeah.
Huffing, or what other things?
Muttering under your breath, or, if you're
rolling your eyes.
Oh yeah. Rolling your eyes. Just, the way you carry yourself when you're either doing something for your spouse or having a conversation in your marriage, or having a disagreement or whatever. You could be saying, maybe you're saying things that are okay and you're not being sarcastic, but your body language is harsh.
Right. Yeah, that's a great call. And all
those things lead into that harshness. So then the other side of that's true too. There's a ton of benefits to reap in your marriage from creating an environment of gentleness. Men, your wives are created with a desire for security. It is compulsive within them. Now, it shows itself in different ways. Some women having a clean, clutter-free home gives them a sense of security.
Sanity. More than security.
Right. But of course, sanity is just being secure in your own mental state.
Yes.
For a lot of women, finances is something in which they need to feel secure. And this idea of gentleness is another way where we can provide a sense of safety and security to our wives. They don't feel like they're in a battlefield when they're in their own home. Mm-hmm. Like they're constantly at any moment going to get ambushed by biting words, cutting remarks, your attitude, harshness, whatever those things are.
And we say men, but it's both ways.
It does. Yeah. That's right. It is both ways.
Men just don't see it as probably don't see harshness as a lack of security.
No, they see it as a challenge,
Right.
Which is going to create a whole nother brand of problem in your marriage, because men also don't want to come home to a battlefield. They want to have a soft landing place at the end of the day. That's what guys want. Okay, it helps build trust, helps promote open communication. Tons of couples we talk to say, man, can you help us understand how to have better communication? Are you gentle in the way that you talk to each other? Do you create a soft space within your home where you guys can talk about anything and it doesn't become harsh and biting?
Oh, anything.
Right.
Even those disagreements.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Deepening intimacy and obviously all of that, creating a more peaceful home environment. So there's benefits to reap from creating this environment in your marriage of gentleness. So practically, because this was his primary question, practically, are there some suggestions you could give for helping me to figure this out? So there's 5 things we're going to talk about here. Increasing in your self-awareness, intentionally communicating this issue that you've identified that you're having, being sympathetic, and trying to look at things from a different perspective, responding to your mistakes with grace, and this goes on both sides. And then, sort of the one we have to say, because this is a biblical marriage podcast, seeking God's help, which of course goes without saying. That would sort of be over all these. Because I got to be honest with you, some of these others, you're not going to be able to do, at least I can't do, without God's help either. So the first one is being self-aware. To this gentleman that wrote us this message, and all husbands, and again, I've never been a wife, so it's hard for me to talk about things from the wife's standpoint. Andrea can jump in on that. Most guys I have found know situations that trigger them.
Their wives.
Right.
Yeah.
Or just situations.
Oh,
right?
the trigger themselves. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Got it.
For some guys, it's, hey, I get home from work, I'm super hungry, and I just want to eat something. Like, that's a practical reality where that person should identify and discuss with their spouse, which this goes into the intentional communication piece. Hey, when I get home, just give me like 20 minutes to have a snack. Because I'm hungry, my stomach hurts, I feel lightheaded, whatever the issues are. I don't want to talk about anything until I've gotten some food in me and I'm feeling a little bit better. For other people, it's whatever. When I'm like after 9:30 at night, we're not having any of these conversations. We're not talking about anything other than we're watching a show together, and that sort of thing. Because if we start going down a combative road, when I'm tired, I'm much more likely to respond poorly. Now, am I making excuses here? Well, not really. I mean, if you're an alcoholic, you don't go hang around places where there's alcohol.
Sure.
Not because it's an excuse, but because you identify this is a problem
temptation
in my life. I don't want to put myself in that position. So in this case, what we're talking about is identifying those positions where you go, man, I really get tempted to fail in the area of gentleness in these situations.
Yep.
And talking about those, for me, I think one thing I really struggle with is stuff that gets sprung on me.
Yep.
I don't like that at all.
And it took a lot of years for him, maybe you, to be self-aware to realize that. I don't know. Maybe a lot of years you were just trying to be nice, and not say anything. I don't know. Anyway.
You know what? I think, let me pause there for a second, because I think you just said something that can really be a problem. Like, it's easy as a spouse. Like, if I go, hey, I struggle with just getting something sprung on me. Can we not do that? And talking about it. As Andrea, it would be easy for her to go, well, just get over it. Like, and so I think for a while I didn't say anything about it because I was like, well, I should just get over that. But it's not. I mean, certainly it's something I can identify and work on and have in some ways, but it's never going to not annoy me.
Right.
Like,
So at some point in the last, I don't know, 5 years, I don't know how many, I don't know, 3 years, we had this conversation where he's like, I don't like plans to be sprung on me. And that maybe shouldn't have been so surprising to me. I just thought he never liked to do anything.
well,
That's not true.
You and I are very different in this way. And you've changed some, and let me tell you, having 5+ kids will do this to you. Because it gets much more difficult to fly by the seat of your pants. But that's how you like to do it.
Yeah,
right? I mean, you like
do.
to just, what am I feeling like right now? Let's go to the park.
Totally.
And
even
if I have nothing, even if I have nothing,
you want me to plan park trips?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
I live my whole life like scheduled because generally I'm thinking about things a bit down the road, right? So I'm, at lunchtime, I'm thinking about, okay, here's the things we have to do this evening. Nothing's going on, so we ought to be able to get the kids to bed on time. Andrea and I will have a bit of time to hang out. This is things I want to talk about, or I'll have some time to get a couple things done that I need to get done. And so in my mind, it's an expectation issue, right? I have an expectation that, okay, there isn't anything on the calendar. Like I get home, we're going to do these things, and I can get a few things done, or we're going to talk, or whatever the thing is. And so then when I get home and it's like, hey, I was thinking we'd go to the park. And then, of course, the thing that inevitably and rightfully most of the time follows after, hey, I thought we'd go to the park is, we're going to have to give the kids baths.
No,
and then
the
thing that follows after that is the kids are in bed 45 minutes late.
That's not, we don't give the kids baths every time we go to the park.
But my point, that's not my point. My point is, that's what frustrates me.
And what's funny is that Nathan hasn't always, in my mind, been a very scheduled person. He is now. But in his mind, he was. I think it's really that he just had the expectations of the way his day would go.
Right.
And my expectation is it's going to go however I feel in the moment.
Right.
Unless we have things like that we have to accomplish or have to do, whatever.
Right.
And I just thought he was a grumpy dude about doing things together as a family, right? Until he brought up to me, which I should have known many years ago. It was probably 10 years ago that he sent me an email. Probably more than that because I think I was working at the time. But anyway, he sent me an email that was like, basically, hey, I've come up with a schedule for our lives. Here it is about how our days are going to look, and we're going to go to bed at 10 every night.
Yeah, I thought I was being super productive and kind because I was like, because this is one out of the blue. We had been talking about but it'd be good if we were a little more scheduled.
I don't know that we said that exactly, but needing to get things done some things done consistently. I don't know, whatever. It was a long time ago.
The primary thing was getting up earlier in the
going to bed at a better time and getting up early.
Yeah,
right,
and that was the primary driver.
Yes, so he had very lovingly come up with this kind of like schedule for our lives, and he sent it to me, and I started crying.
True story.
And I was so mad because I was like, I don't want to live a life that's so scheduled. Now you should see our our lives. Yeah. But
you should go back in time and slap that girl.
but I should have known then that, it's just that he has an expectation of the way he wants his days to go, and I should have been able to read the room, but I didn't get it, I guess. So
well, and we have met each other in this because I, as you know, from the times when I travel regularly for work. I mean, when I travel, I do the exact same thing when I'm gone. I mean, exact same thing.
I eat
at the same place. Yeah. I have the same meals. I have the same bedtime routine. I have the same wake up routine. It is the same. And I honestly would be perfectly fine living my life that way. Where I've kind of come back is now I sort of only do that in 1 day increments because we might have a plan for tomorrow, but there's no way that's set in stone for Andrea until tomorrow.
I don't know about that.
And that's fine. It's great. Like there isn't any wrong or right on that to bring us back around and to identify this this guy's question, I'll bet that there are similar things between you and your wife where you're just different.
And having
those differences frustrate you.
And having a meeting of the minds.
Right.
And compromising and saying, oh, yeah, well, being introspective enough to know this is something that triggers me. I think we can work on this together, meet each other in the middle.
Right.
And then I'm not going to be tempted in being harsh or unkind or whatever, because we have a better understanding of each other.
Right.
And how we can love each other well in that.
Right. And so that transitions nicely into the second main point, which is we have to be so intentional with our communication. Because while the first piece is self-awareness, it's being introspective, which neither Andrea or I were very good at towards the beginning of our marriage. Even when we started getting better in that regard, we were not good at intentionally communicating that with each other. And the story we just told is a great example of that.
Yeah.
I think I had an understanding of this is how I wanted it to work, but here's the trap we fall into. We're not honest enough with ourselves to say, this is the expectation that I want to happen. What we tell ourselves is, this is the way things should happen.
Yeah.
So going from a matter of opinion, a personality thing, something I want, to something that's right and wrong. And man, that's got to be up there on the biggest issues that we have to correct, particularly young, but not just young couples on, is now you might have an expectation that he will go to bed with you at night when you go to bed. That is not a right or wrong issue. It's not. So it might be the way your parents did it. It might be the way some pastor one time told you it ought to be done. That's not a right or wrong issue.
Yep.
And we need to be mature enough to recognize what is actually an issue of right and wrong and what is not. You and your spouse think you should have an open marriage. That's wrong. Like that, there's no gray area there. It's wrong. So many other things in our marriage where we start getting harsh with each other because we say, no, this is the right way to do it. But in reality, that's just the way we want it.
Right.
And we need to be careful to communicate things that way when we talk to our spouse about it. And one of the best things you can do is just stop before you respond to your spouse. Just take a moment, take a deep breath, not a dramatic breath. Just
See, that's the body language.
Take a breath and think about what you're going to say. And feel free to phrase things as, I feel this way. That's a perfectly okay thing to say because it avoids saying, the right thing to do is this, or this is what should happen. It's okay to say, I feel stressed when I have a plan for the night because I'm trying to get things done you want me to get done. I'm trying to spend some time with the kids. There's some things I want to do for myself. And now there's all these things I didn't even know were on your mind that now you're wanting to do, and that stresses me out. It's okay to say those things. And it needs to be said in a soft tone of voice, and as Andrea mentioned, calm the body language. One of the biggest freedoms we need to have as spouses is the freedom to say, you know what? I'm getting frustrated right now and I don't want to speak to you unkindly. So can you give me like 10 minutes? I'm going to go have a nice poop and then I'll I'm just saying, I don't know, maybe there's somebody out there that needs freedom to say that. And then we'll come back and talk about this. But then do come back, right? Set a time, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, and then come back. And talk about
and
it.
you be the one to come. If you were the one saying, I need 10 minutes, don't make your spouse hunt for you in 10 minutes and whatever, 30 minutes when you haven't come back.
Right. Then thirdly, right, so be self-aware, use intentional communication, and then try to take the other person's perspective, right? Ask questions, listen to what they're saying, and try to ask questions from their perspective, right? So what I hear you saying is that you're so busy during the day that you just don't think about planning things out. right? Or, you know what, that's not Andrea's case. I'm just trying to be good about like listening and then asking questions, right? And don't use sarcasm, right? Just genuinely say, and if you say something and you go, that didn't sound quite right, feel free to say that. Like, hey, that didn't sound right. Let me try and phrase it a different way. But when we keep a soft tone and we kill our inner defense attorney, right? That's a phrase we use, which means we all have this part in us that rises up when our spouse or other people say something we disagree with, where we want to rush to our own defense. That has to stop in intentional communication and trying to take the other person's perspective. We have to be able to kill that and go, okay, I don't fully understand that. Can you help me understand what it is that you're thinking, right? But validate your spouse's feelings, right? Even if you don't agree with them, validation does not mean I agree with you. Validation means I hear what you're saying. I recognize that this hurts you, or this angers you, or this makes you sad. Like, I'm hearing that. And I think it's okay if you're building this environment to say, I don't understand that, or even I don't agree with you in this way, but I hear what you're saying. It creates an environment where you can have some back and forth, and full agreement isn't a prerequisite to the conversation. Because when completely agreeing on something becomes the end goal, that now there's winning and losing. And when there's, like, sometimes there has to be, and gang, from a Christian perspective, the Bible's pretty clear about how that's going to work. And, you know, that's something we've done a number of episodes on. Please go check those out, about roles in marriage and the mantle that God puts on the husband, and the mantle that God, or the requirements that God puts on the wife. You don't have to like it. Feel free to take it up with God. But it's very clear in the Bible how that is. And there are times when a decision has to be made. You're not in agreement. And men, you can do even that with grace and kindness and in a loving way.
Yeah, you know, there's this ongoing disagreement that Nathan and I are having. And we've talked about it quite a few times, and we are just not going to see eye to eye on it. But we're able to talk about that, and Nathan's super gentle with it, but he does not agree with me, and I do not agree with him at all. But yet we can still say, I'm hearing what you're saying, and I can understand how you can come to that.
Right.
But I don't agree with that.
Right.
And that's not how I feel about it.
Sure.
And both of us can be gentle with that, and kind and understanding of the other person's viewpoints,
right,
but still disagree.
Yep.
And so even in disagreements or arguments or whatever you want to call them, there can still be a lot of gentleness and humility and kindness, even if you're never going to come to an agreement.
Right.
And maybe there's not even going to be a compromise. In this circumstance, there's not going to be there's got to be a decision made, and that's got to be up to Nathan. The decision it doesn't work to have a compromise. And we just have to choose to be gentle towards each other in that.
Right.
And you know, choosing harshness isn't going to make our relationship better, and it's not going to change a situation.
Right. Right. So then here's the other piece of this. Your spouse isn't always going to do it right. And when they don't, your response is your responsibility. Yep. So if you're genuinely trying to relate to your wife in gentleness, particularly if you don't have a history of this. So with this gentleman that sent us the question, your wife is going to be switched on to you being harsh with her. And so she's probably going to be quick to react to you out of hurt, out of a sense of fear because the security there has been shaken, and to respond to you in anger, even if you're relating to her in kindness.
Yeah.
you have to be willing to forgive quickly. If she, even though you think you're being kind, if she says, man, it feels like you're being unkind, you need to immediately be able to go, you know what, I'm really sorry. But will you please forgive me? I'm trying to kill that harshness within me that I've allowed to fester and grow way too long. But I'm not going to do it right all the time. Will you forgive me? And even if she says something sarcastic or whatever in response to that, you've apologized and then you move on. But we have to be able to forgive quickly. Don't bring up previous stuff.
Ugh,
That's just never going to help. It's not going to help promote gentleness. When we forgive, and we move on from the standpoint of revisiting these things over and over and over again. And then the last thing, and this is just the reality, these are hard things that we're talking about. But I can tell you,
yes, they are.
If you want to pray something that I guarantee you the Lord will honor that prayer, it's praying to grow in the fruits of the Spirit. Because that is God's desire for us, that we live lives where we know God and we glorify God, those two things. And a part of glorifying God is that the fruits of the Spirit are apparent in our lives, two of which are kindness and gentleness.
And the fruits of the Spirit are not always going to just come upon us magically. They're going to be given to us through exercising, opportunities to exercise those fruits of the Spirit.
Yep, that's right. Like any other habits we want to create.
Yep. So when you pray for gentleness and it feels like, I don't feel any different. I'm still really wanting to be harsh with my wife. It's probably just that God has given you the opportunities to continue to ask him for the strength to be gentle, and he's giving you the opportunities to do that. And he'll of course give to you abundantly, right, beyond what you can seek, ask or imagine. But it's probably not going to be just this magical switch that all of a sudden I just want to be gentle all the time.
Sure.
But it may be that when you're in a circumstance that you're about to be harsh, the Lord causes you to pause and pray, and rather than immediately responding in harshness.
Right, that's good. Another thing, ask the Holy Spirit for guidance and communication. Remember, God created your spouse, so there's nobody that knows her better than the Holy Spirit does. And so praying for insights into who your spouse is another great way to pray as you try to create this environment in your marriage of gentleness.
Yep.
All right, guys, love to know, what do you think? Right? What strategies have you created in your own life to try and pursue your spouse in gentleness? Have you had to root out sarcasm in your marriage? Have you had to root out harshness in your marriage? What did you do to try and switch from that harshness to gentleness? For that gentleman that sent us in this question, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciated your transparency. I thought it was a very sweet question, and I pray that the Holy Spirit gives you insights into your wife, that you can love her even in the midst of this really difficult situation you're dealing with, that you can love her through that, and that through the power of the Holy Spirit in your life, you can win her back to you, that you can win her and draw her into a marriage that's based on God's design, and that is in all ways glorifying and honoring to him. For everyone else listening to this, if you have other questions, comments, would love to have you post those either in the comments section if you're watching or listening to this on YouTube, or in the comments on our dedicated page for this episode on either Instagram or Facebook, or you can message us directly or send us an email, marriagebydesignpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, guys, thank you so much for joining us. And remember, God is for your marriage.
Thanks so much for listening. We just wanted to say, if you have a comment, a question, something that you're struggling with, or need prayer, please reach out to us. You can get a hold of us by emailing marriagebydesignpodcast@gmail.com, or of course you can comment on any of our social media and we will get back to you. But if you have something private, feel free to email us. We're happy to personally respond to you.
That's right. And we do respond to every comment that we receive, either through our website, through YouTube, through our social medias, which leads me to feel free to pop over to our website, marriagebydesignpodcast.com. You can leave comments on any of our videos through that site. We would love to be able to connect with you, but please don't hesitate to reach out. Even if you just need prayer, you need someone to hear what you're going through, we're here for the Marriage by Design community, so feel free to reach out anytime. Until then, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk to you next time.